Hey, this is Meleika of Evanston Live TV, and I have with me returning guests. I don't call you Alderman anymore, Council Member Bobby Burns. Welcome back, Council Member Burns.
Yes, I'm back for the, I don't know, third, fourth, fifth time. Who's counting? But I'm back
Yes,
again.
yes. Well, the door is always open. I mean, you've been on as a community leader. I mean, you were active in the community way before being elected to Fifth Ward council member. And now you're a council member and you're making moves. And one thing about you, Bobby, you always get me to think of things from another perspective. So I wanted to bring you on because it was the big announcement back on the 14th about the new Fifth Ward school. This is your ward. And so I wanted you to come on and talk about how you see all this playing out. And I mean, and you were one of the people that Henry Wilkins, he speaks of every time he tells his story in, taking the baton and running. He talks about that first meeting, school board meeting he went to, and you stood up and said, you were fighting for a Fifth Ward school. That was years ago.
Yes,
Um, so yeah, we have to hear how you're thinking, how you're feeling about all this, and all the talk in the community, which you and I have talked about. So
right.
we want to address that as well.
Yeah. Well. First off, I'm excited, and I'm happy I can enjoy this. Um, I'm happy that this was in 2012 when we worked to get a school in the Fifth Ward through the referendum process. It was a battle because we had to try to persuade the electorate, right, the voting bloc in Evanston, to support this school that wasn't in their neighborhood, right? And of course, you want people to be able to identify with things outside of their neighborhoods and community. That's what we're trying to achieve as a society, but that's not always how we think as human beings. We think about what we perceive is best for us, and we tend to prioritize things that have a direct and immediate benefit to us and our families. And so it was a challenge, and we faced a lot of resistance as an organization. We started a group called Citizens for a Better Evanston that organized and campaigned around getting people to vote yes on this referendum. And the referendum would have changed the tax levy and allowed the district to fund the building of a school in the Fifth Ward. And it was tough. And there was an anti school movement. There was a campaign that formed, an organization that formed to oppose the school in the Fifth Ward and to persuade people to vote no on the referendum question. And they had yard signs and held meetings, and it was a lot. And it put people on opposite odds of the issue, and it wasn't just split between color lines. It was also split in the African American community. You had those who were for it and those opposed it, and it was tough. It was mentally and emotionally draining at times, especially to be on opposite ends of an issue with a mentor or someone that you looked up to. And and so although the referendum wasn't successful, it was successful in the fifth and second wards, and the wards that have a higher African American population. And in the immediate area surrounding the school, I call it, well, from a Cook County census block standpoint, it's the census tract that is 8092. It was overwhelming support, upwards of, I believe the last when I checked, it was 70%, I think 70 something percent of folks living in the immediate area around where the school would be, around that family focused Fleetwood area, supported the school in the Fifth Ward. And so I think that motivated me and others at the time to really immediately after the referendum failed, to start to think about how we could revive this effort, which is why I pointed out in my statement about the school that ever since it closed in the late 60s, there has been one attempt after another to get a school back in the Fifth Ward. And so, again, almost immediately after it failed, we started to think about ways to do it without a referendum. And then, skip, 11 years later, I'm speaking at a District 65 board meeting. And the board meeting the board is considering at the time whether or not to turn Bessie Rose into a wall-to-wall tweet program. So it would be a wall-to-wall dual language program where the students are they're learning English, but they're also learning Spanish. And so a comment I made was, and the reason why they wanted to do it, or partly why they wanted to, the reason why they wanted to do it at that school, we know why they wanted to do it. There's an emerging, growing Latinx population, native Spanish speaking population that they need to serve. And so we understood the motivation behind wanting to do it. The reason why they selected that location in part was because of how close Bessie Rose is to the Fifth Ward, because that emerging, right, vibrant, growing Latinx community is in the Fifth Ward. It's elsewhere throughout the community, but it's largely in the Fifth Ward. And so at the time, I remarked during a public comment opportunity that said, look, we really missed an opportunity as a city, right? Here we are. One of the reasons why the district leadership at the time, the superintendent and the community, as well as our organization, wanted a school in the Fifth Ward was because we also understood there was this emerging, growing native Spanish-speaking population that the school could serve. And so I said that day, hey, we really missed an opportunity, by not having this school. Here we are now, years later, talking about how we need a school. That day it was discussing Bessie Rose as that school to serve this kind of growing population. But I said, look, we really missed an opportunity, because that was the same reason why we were saying we needed a school back then. And then lo and behold, look what happened now is that you have Bessie Rose that will now close in a sense, at least in the way it's operated today. And the plan is for it to move into the Fifth Ward school. So again, hindsight is 2020, yes, but we were saying even back then that the Fifth Ward school was the right decision for our needs here in the community. And I think history has proven us right. The fact that they're gonna now close the district is closing Bessie Rose and moving it to this new location just shows that we really did miss an opportunity back in 2012. So Henry and I have been working closely since that day to move this forward. And he, created an organization called STEM School Evanston and did a great job reorganizing the community around this effort, especially turning new Evanston residents onto this story about a neighborhood, right, in Evanston, the only neighborhood, in fact, without a school. And he did a great job, and hats off to him.
Mm-hmm. How is it, you had spoke about, being on opposite ends of your mentor. How was that for you? This movement was so important, and I still don't quite understand those who were against it, who voted against it back in the day. Make me understand that. And then how was that for you going up against, leadership that you saw as a mentor for something like this?
Again, it's tough because, some of the folks who opposed the school back then were strong pillars in the African American community. So you really can't go against them, right? You can try to persuade others to share your position. You can give them your reasoning and the rationale behind it. But these were pillars in the community who opposed it. And so we really couldn't go against them. And I think it didn't hurt our efforts in the Fifth Ward. I think because the Fifth Ward and Second Wards experience this on a daily basis, this Fifth Ward especially. And what I mean by that is it's their children, right? It's the young people in their neighborhood who are being bused to elementary schools in order to achieve our integrated school system that we have. Because they're experiencing every day, I think they said, by the way they cast their votes, that, look, we want a school in the Fifth Ward. We want to bring it back. But how it hurt us was with the rest of the community. It gave them an easy out to say, look, if your own Black leadership doesn't think this is the right move, then why should we, right? And so it emboldened them in a sense to, um, it emboldened them to feel more strongly about their arguments, and it made it a challenge again to persuade others across the community. So it was tough. It was emotionally draining because there's a level of respect, at least the way I operate. There's a level of respect that I won't cross that line, right? Like if this is a mentor, and so I can't go as hard on that person as as I would maybe someone else. And so that's why I said it was an emotionally and mentally draining that time around. And this time around, we did not have that opposition. And in fact, some of the people who were against it 10 years ago have told me personally that they have regret, that they experienced regret not supporting it, and they supported it this time around. And so that's probably what I want to highlight. A lot of those people that did not support it that time did come around this time and supported it publicly. And I'm proud of that. And it was much easier this time. It was less emotionally draining this time, which is good. This was an opportunity for us to truly celebrate and enjoy this as a community. We've had enough struggle. It always feels like we're going from one fight to the next. It was nice to just have, again, the support of the board, support of the superintendent, largely the support of the community, at least those who spoke publicly about it, and had STEM School Evanston organizing other people around this issue. It was a win across the board. It was a lot easier, and I appreciate being able to enjoy things without struggle. I really do. And so that was the main difference. We didn't have to struggle against our own community. We didn't see a lot of public pushback. I think you probably, I'm sure the board and the superintendent have their email.
They got some pushback.
I'm sure they got a lot of pushback
they got
by email, right? And I told Dr. Horton this, I said, people will say a lot of things through email, but what I love about this time is that because it was done without a referendum, people couldn't just cast their vote and leave it at that. Because it was up to the board, it was up to the board to decide. They really had to petition their elected leadership directly, right? They had to make their position known. Even in doing it privately, they still had to let an elected official know how they stood. And then to really persuade the board as a full body, they would have to speak publicly about it. And that's much harder than sending an email, right? Mm-hmm. Or even that's much harder, even than just casting your vote in a ballot where no one knows how you feel about it and you don't have to defend your position. And that's what was also beautiful about this, is that if you did oppose it, you couldn't just do it in the ballot box. You had to either petition your board member directly, and then they could challenge your position if they saw fit, or you had to go publicly and do it. And it forced the conversation into the public, and that was a beautiful thing. So.
Yeah, and we saw a lot of it during the election for D65 school board. The topic of the Fifth Ward school, I think, was in every forum. It definitely was a hot one on Evanston Live TV when we did the forum for the D65 candidates. And I think that's kind of where people started deciding who they were for and who they were not for, was partly the Fifth Ward school and how they stood on it. And it was surprising that, a couple of the candidates were like, well, that's something, that could happen in the future. I don't see it happening now, type of thing. So that spoke volumes. So yeah, no more hiding behind the ballot. You had to come.
You had to come on with it. Come on
with it.
And that's, again, the debate should always remain, all debates and all disagreements should always remain respectful. And so I'm certainly not saying that it forced people to have to defend their position, even through kind of unreasonable and unfair attacks. What I'm saying is, once you make it public, now you have to defend that position, right? And someone can challenge it. based on logic, right? Or in their line of reasoning. And then others get to join in, right? They get to observe this debate happening among two people or several people and hear both sides, and then they can weigh in, right? And it just helps us to form, I think, a stronger opinion on issues, and not one that is totally impacted by our own biases and kind of our narrow world views, but it allows us to hold opinions, develop opinions through almost this like crowdsourcing of information and analysis.
Having an adult conversation.
Yeah.
Well, let me hear your perspective. Well, here's
Yeah.
my perspective. Maybe we can meet in the middle. Maybe, at least even if I
Exactly.
stay where I'm at, I want a Fifth Ward school, but at least I understand from your point of view, you might have some valid points, but I'm still where I'm at. It
Yeah.
makes people grow up, and you can't be a coward. You got
And sometimes you may change. At least that's how I am. Is I always say that I don't need to have the right answer. I don't. It doesn't need to be my answer. It needs to. I want the right answer, right? It doesn't have to be my idea. I want the best idea, and so I don't mind changing my views. I don't mind changing my opinion. I'm actually seeking new information. I want to challenge my thoughts and ideas and opinions so that hopefully hopefully we can get a better result out of that. I really believe in the crowdsourcing of information and ideas. I believe in that. We're stronger together. We're much stronger together. So it required that the process this time allowed for that to happen. And I think ultimately we arrived at a better place. And not just with the school being here, but I also want to highlight the fact that while doing this, they really, the district led by Sarita Smith, really looked at all of the school boundary lines in the city of Evanston, which I think was unique. I'm not sure if the district did that the last time. I know they did some facilities planning where they talked about, all right, we're going to have to build a school in the Fifth Ward, but also what are some investments that we need to make throughout the district to improve our facilities across the district. That was done both times, but I'm not sure they looked at redrawing the lines as a whole, school district and city, and that happened this time. And so I think, again, because the debate happened in this way, we arrived at a much better place. It's good for the Fifth Ward, but it's also good for the whole community. We have new lines, school boundary and assignment lines across the city that make a lot more sense. And then we also have we know what we need to do. The district knows what they need to do to improve the facilities across the school district. So we're in a good place right now.
One thing I'll say about you, Bobby, is that I've seen you get into heated debates with people. Like you stand strong on how you feel about something. But one thing about you is all of a sudden you'll come around and you'll ask more questions about the other side. And then you give a total understanding of the opposing view as well as your own view. And I think that speaks volumes because, you have, I'm not going to call them out, but you have some council members, they are where they are. They don't want to hear nothing about what the community, anyone has to say. Or I have one council member that's on this current council tell me, well, I trust the council. Well, what about the people? I trust the council.
Right.
So I like that. I like that in you, in that you feel passionate about something, but you always come out and you ask questions so that you get an understanding of the other side. And then sometimes you end up changing or swaying, a little. And I think that speaks volumes.
And I also want to say this, and this isn't to pat myself on the back, but I've had to really, I think my style has developed over the years, and I see this as something that has benefited me, and hopefully it can benefit others. But I'm transparent. I'm also not trying to hide my hand, right? I'm not trying to manipulate the situation. I'm not holding things back because I think it's a weak argument, so that my position isn't vulnerable. to attacks or criticisms. I'm giving you all of my thoughts, right? I'm laying it bare so that you can pick through it and say, you know what, here's where there's an error. And if there is an error, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I haven't thought about that. And even in the moment, if I don't do that, trust me, when I go back home, I'm like, you know what, that was a good point. And I'll reach out to that person, right? I'll reach out to Meleika. I'll reach out to Dr. Horton. I'll reach out to a Councilman Reed. I'll reach out to a community member, Carla Sutton, or whoever it is, and say, you know what, that was a good point. I thought about that. So that's the other thing is, we all have our flaws. I certainly have mine, but I try to be fully transparent. I am going to show you my work, just like the math teachers used to say, right? Show us your work.
Right.
Here is my work. I'm not trying to hide my hand. I want to be as transparent as possible. And if there's an error in my thinking, let me know, because I certainly would never want that to get in the way of progress. At the end of the day, we're all trying to make a difference. All of this, this is a big deal. This impacts the decisions we make as community leaders, as elected officials, impacts a lot of people. And we need to make sure we're coming to the right decision. So, but I appreciate that acknowledgement. And that's why I always come back, is because I feel like you operate in that same spirit. Transparency, right? I'm going to let you know how I feel. I'm not hiding anything. And that allows us to have a discussion. Once you know where someone stands, you can say, well, what about that thing over there you said? Have you thought about it like this? But if you hide your hand, you can't even have a real honest upfront discussion if everything is hidden. Right. So I appreciate your transparency as well, and your willingness to talk, to do this,
Thank you.
Some people don't want to do this.
Oh yeah.
Some people ain't inviting you on to have a discussion, right? They don't want to really hear from you. And I don't mean you, I mean like whoever that person is. That so I appreciate you always being willing to do this and talk.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we learn as a community. We got to have, like you said, conversation. You just can't go to the ballot. We want you to vote, of course, but you got to listen to the conversation. You got to hear the other side, because you'd be surprised. You might actually agree, learn some things as well. Now, the community has been talking about, well, okay, so now they're going to start the process of building a new fifth ward school, but so many Black families are being priced out. There's this mad exodus over the past few years here in several years here in Evanston. And so now it's not going to benefit those that, who were fighting for it in the first place. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, the fifth, when I say the fifth ward, I'm speaking more on West Evanston than the full political boundary, because the political boundary goes east of the tracks in Green Bay Road. But I think when most people think about the fifth ward, they think about kind of west of the tracks. And there was a time when that was 90, something percent African American years ago. And at this point, the 2019 American Community Survey, it had the Black population at 54%, I want to say, and the Latinx population, I want to say at around 24%, and then the white community at 11%. And this was in 2019. American Community Survey, which is not the most accurate survey, but it gives us some idea of population. Better data is the 2020 census data, which I recently took a look at, and the African American population has dropped to 51%, but still a majority. I think the Latinx population might be up to about 26%. I think the white population is up to 13, if I remember correctly. And so, in the last, 20, 30 years, the ward has changed. And, it's obvious, the cost of living in Evanston is incredibly high. There's this heat map that I saw the other day that showed all of the areas where there was a, high cost of living, especially for housing, in kind of a darker shade, and then the lighter areas where it was more affordable. And so you saw Evanston darker than even, I think, most parts of Chicago. But then if you looked at North Chicago and Zion and all those areas out that way, it was almost white. And so it's something that I've said and others have said for a while, that a lot of Evanston residents are choosing to go north of us, to Zion and North Chicago and other places, and Waukegan. And this is why, right? It's just it's a dollar and cents issue for people. I think my feeling is that we all came in as council members. I don't think there was one council member that didn't come in and talk about the importance of creating affordable housing in the community. I think everybody had that as part of their platform, and it's deeply important to me as a elected official who represents an area that is that cost of living is having a disparate impact on. But also I grew up in Evanston, right? I personally know this issue is personal to me because I know people who have had to move to Des Plaines and to Zion and even out of state in some cases. And I'm happy for those who were able to find a welcoming place for them and their families. A lot of them are doing really well, but many of them would have loved to stay in Evanston but couldn't afford it. And so, I created a committee called a Here to Stay Committee, and we are deeply focused on doing everything that we can to create, to allow people, longtime Evanston residents, especially who want to stay here, live here, be able to afford to live here. And, I guess the best way to put it is that it's a fight that everyone knows that we have to take on and win, and we will win it. I feel confident that we will win this fight. There's some people who don't feel confident. There's some people who feel like the battle is lost and that no matter what we do as a city, it'll accelerate gentrification. And I understand where that frustration and that doubt comes from, right? It comes from them looking around at their neighborhood and seeing it drastically changing over the years, and not seeing enough support from the city to help people stay here. So, and although, again, the city has made some progress, it just hasn't been enough, unfortunately. And so as a community, not just City of Evanston government, but as a community of organizations and individuals and as elected officials, we all need to come together to tackle this issue. But I do feel it's a battle we will win. And that's how I'm approaching it. I wouldn't have run for office if I wasn't ready to take on that issue. It's the single most important issue for me, and we'll win, and I could talk about some things that we're doing, but I want people to know first and foremost that we will win. You have an elected leader and me and other elected leaders who are taking this on, and we feel confident about what we're going to do in the next few years.
Well, just, word on the street, things that I hear, I do believe the community has confidence in a few of you on the council, but it's a couple up there that they know are not for their best interests to stay here in Evanston. They're okay with them leaving. I actually have one Evanston media outlet actually say to me off camera, well, if Black people can't afford to live in Evanston, then maybe they should move to Flint. So, you have that kind of mentality here in Evanston, and they make money and they get supported. And, there's certain members of council who will only deal with certain outlets because they will give the messaging that they want, but not really of what the people are feeling. So, like you said, they are community members who are seeing things, they've been feeling things for many, many years. I think we have some good leadership on the council now, not all, only a few of you, who I think really are for the people. And though all of the council is saying that they are for affordable housing doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can say what it means to me. When I say affordable housing, I mean that for all housing types, and I mean that for, renters and people who are looking to purchase homes, townhomes, et cetera, single family homes or townhomes. And, what leading up to a discussion we're going to be having about affordable housing in the Fifth Ward, it'll the conversation will go public soon. But I asked my colleagues and community members, and I'll ask you, Meleika, what do you think is a moderately priced townhome? And I think we talked about this already, but a moderately priced townhome in Evanston goes for right now?
A moderate, I would say 300,000-400,000.
And the answer is $575,000 or thereabout, right? And I've asked this question to everybody, pretty much all my colleagues, the city manager came close to the right answer, or was at the right answer. But the reason why most people say usually the high is about 300 and the low is 150, I think the reason why they say that is because the 575 is so disconnected and detached from the lived experience and the wages that most people are earning that are looking for, right, housing in Evanston, that it just doesn't seem real. It seems almost outlandish to think that
over $500,000
is $500,000.
Is a $500,000
in Evanston. And so when I say high cost of living, it is high here. And that's on top of the fact that the cost of material to build has also gone up since the pandemic, but even before then is pretty high. The cost of construction has been high. To a new affordable housing unit is up to $300,000 a unit, thereabout. And so it's always been expensive to build new. And but the issue is we don't have enough affordable housing units. And so we need to build new, but it's expensive to do it. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to pass the TIF district, is because we needed the funding to do it. We needed all these taxing entities to come together and say, you know what, we're going to kick in, we're going to set aside some money specifically to build new affordable housing units because it's expensive. And so that's the challenge that we have, is the market is able to sell a product quickly that the folks that you and I are trying to solve for can't afford. And so the question is, who's gonna help? Who's gonna intervene? I think government has to intervene in those situations. I think it is it's the responsibility of government to address unmet needs. And I think there's no one else that can intervene, and there's no one else that has the budget to intervene in the way that government can. We're a $300 million organization. And so I think we need to get much more involved in buying land, buying property, not to develop it necessarily as ourselves, but to hold on to it, to get land site control so that we can decide, at least on those sites, what happens. And that could be a mix of working with different affordable housing developers to develop single family homes or multi-unit properties. But I think that's one big thing the city has to do. We have to get involved and intervene in helping to address this issue, because the market is not able to. And then the other thing is, we're going to, through our comprehensive planning process, we're going to have to look at our zoning. We still have neighborhoods in Evanston where you can't build a multi-unit property, right? And so you hear a lot of people, especially folks from the 5th and 2nd Ward, say, well, everybody needs their fair share of affordable housing across the city. It shouldn't just be in the 5th Ward and the 2nd Wards. And I understand the frustration. I'm proud of the fact that we have affordable housing in the 5th Ward, and we continue to plan for more. But I understand the frustration, and I get the point. And I think in able to achieve that across the city, we need to look at our zoning. We either need to make more, we need to allow density in R1 zones. And right now we can't do that. So that's a discussion we'll have in the next few months as we start our comprehensive planning process.
Oh yeah, because other wards have said, it's not just the 5th Ward or the 2nd Ward or the 8th Ward. Many of us are getting priced out as well. We can't afford to live here. So, I mean, when you put out that figure, moderate townhome over $500,000, that's right, probably scaring the bejesus out of people who are looking at Evanston like, damn, that's a townhouse. So how much is a single family home?
Exactly.
Yeah, and
2 bedrooms I think is going for $1,500 a month right now. It's and when I canvassed the ward during the campaign, folks were saying around $1,000 is what they could afford for a 2-bedroom, and it's at $1,500. So it just, whether you're looking at moderately priced townhomes, whether you're looking at what 2 bedrooms are going for right now, the wages that people are earning and the cost of living is just not aligned, right? And there's, so we have to do better there. And then I've also said that we also need to realize that this community has always been a strong middle-class community. There was work both in Evanston, but around the area that supported the strong middle class. And so we also need to attack it from both ends, right? We need to develop new affordable units, not just rental, but also homes to purchase and townhomes to purchase and condos to purchase. But we also need to do a better job connecting Evanston residents with careers. And so I've been partnering with, Tana Francelno and MEAC, which is a committee that works on trying to find employment for youth, for HHS youth specifically, and people like Rebuilding Warehouse and others to solve for that question as well. How do we create gainful employment? How do we create opportunity for Evanston residents? I've been talking about it a lot in the context of our lead pipe replacement program. I want to make sure that a fair share of Evanston residents are able to be the ones that actually replace the lead, because it's a really good paying work, and it's work that we know will be here for the next 30 years. So someone, if hired today, could literally work the next 30 years, right? Let's say you're 20, you can work the next 30 years, getting paid good money, something around 100K a year, 90K a year, and retire at 50, and would have bought a house, paid it off, and it's good work. And so that's the other piece of it. And I don't want to forget that it has just as much to do with job creation than it does also building new affordable units.
Yeah, I was wondering, what does middle class mean these days? What is the middle class? It seems like the wealthy and then everybody else. Do you hear talk throughout the community that there's certain leadership that's trying to turn Evanston into a wealthy area? We were known. I mean, my mom bought her house here in 1984, and to me that felt like we were a middle class community at that time. Everybody was working. I mean, it was thriving. It was a beautiful community, and now it seems like it might be gearing towards turning Evanston into like a LA, New York, and an expensive place to be, desired place to be. If you're making a certain amount of money, if you're in this income tax bracket, then you can afford to live in Evanston. I know that's not your vision, but do you think that is the vision of other leadership?
I'm not sure it's the vision, but it's certainly the reality of something or someone or some organization doesn't intervene. And I think it's probably going to require a combination of all of those, of individuals and organizations and government to come together to address it. But yeah, if no one intervenes, if we allow the market, and when I say the market, essentially what I'm saying is you have, and I always say this to people, is if I ask my sister and brother-in-law and my mother and a couple of friends, and I say, look, let's pull together our money and buy some property so that we can, invest in property so we can make a return. And I said, but guess what? We're gonna try to rent out to the lowest of income, and we're gonna buy properties. They might not be interested in that, right? When people invest their life savings, especially, and put their money into something, they want to get a return, and a nice return. And it's what allows them to plan for their future, right? A plan for their retirement. And it's not, which is why we have government and affordable housing developers to create products that the marketplace won't, right? That individual investors are saying, look, we can't figure out how to make a profit with that model, so we can't do it. Or cost of construction is too expensive, and so we have to charge this in order to get a return that our investors want to see. And so again, I think it will happen, no matter the motives or who wants to see what in Evanston. It will happen. if I think the city doesn't intervene. And so you'll see in the next few weeks, I have a few, referrals in and proposals that are going to come before this council that puts the city in a position that it's familiar with. We've done a lot. We did some of this during with the NSP2 federal money that we got back in, I want to say 2008, 2009, after the market crash, when there was foreclosures all over the community. And there was many foreclosed homes in fifth wards and eighth wards that the city purchased using NSP2 money. So I think we need to bring some of that back, right? We were really engaged and aggressive then to identify property, to buy it, to get site control, and then to develop affordable housing. I think we need that same effort today. And then we just need to make sure that we're prioritizing Evanston residents first and foremost when we build new affordable housing units. That's also very important to me. It has to be Evanston priority, because we have a need here for affordable housing. And so as long as that Evanston local priority is on the projects, I think that's exactly what we need to do. So you'll see some proposals coming before council pretty soon. And I think what the community could do, and we're going to put something out soon through the Here to Stay committee, is we need to figure out how to have a conversation with the community about what they need and what they're looking for. I was able to talk to some people during the campaign, and again, through those conversations, learn that people are looking for, $1,000 2-bedroom units, or people are looking roughly for anything $250,000 or less for a home. So I got some really good feedback during the campaign, but we need to get down to the individual level and really determine what people's needs are. And so we're going to be putting out a form pretty soon for people to fill out who are looking either to move back, who grew up in Evanston, or looking to move back to Evanston, or who are at risk of being priced out of Evanston, to really figure out what they're looking for, what their needs are related to housing, so that we can come up with a plan that addresses their unique need. And I would really love to see a housing authority in Evanston. I talked about this a few times, but we need staff and that is responsible and dedicated to doing this work, to helping people stay here. Because currently we don't really have a lot of staff doing that. Our staff are already doing other important work for the city. And then there are organizations that do this work, but they serve much larger populations, and they won't be able to provide the level of customer service I think Evanston residents need, who are in housing crisis. And so another thing I'm pushing for is to create a housing authority and to hire people to work on this every day, right? Their responsibility and their assignment is to support Evanston residents in staying here or relocating back to Evanston. And so again, that's another proposal you'll see. But the main thing I just want to encourage people with is we understand that this is an issue, especially those who grew up in Evanston and have who this affects personally, who have either had to move out of Evanston at some point, or I've seen others have to move. And we're working on this, and we will win. We will win. We're not gonna, probably get back to 90%, but I don't think that was ever supposed to be that way in the first place. Again, a lot of this community was done, we now know through redlining, a lot of this community was built through kind of social engineering, in a sense, forcing the Black community to live amongst one another in such high numbers. But I do think that the people who want to live here in Evanston will be able to stay here, and we'll win this fight.
Well, I love hearing that, because I came back from sunny, beautiful LA because it was just way too expensive. I mean, I felt like every day was just about hustling to make money just to be all right.
Right.
And then so when I got here and the whole Exodus talk, I was like, wait, what? Wait, what's going on in Evanston now? So, that's when I started really getting deep into what was happening in the community.
How would you compare Evanston cost of living in California? We're still not anywhere close to that, right?
No.
Yeah.
No. LA is absolutely insane. It's like almost inhuman.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah. Like, so you're expecting everybody here to be millionaires just to be like, all right. you
Right.
know, here in LA, and New York is insane as well. So I'm hoping Evanston isn't trying to, you know, be like those cities. Wonderful cities, absolutely. Absolutely. I
Not like
love
I said,
LA, love New York, but
I would just repeat, I don't think it's a trying as much as it's a anytime an area is desirable, the cost of living will go up, right? If people want to live there and develop there and be there, the cost of living will go up. And so this city was always on a trajectory for where we are now. I think where we slipped up as a community is, again, we didn't create the affordable housing that we needed to, and we didn't create the jobs we needed to. And that's and making sure it, you know, that it had a local priority. It's one thing to create jobs, but if those jobs aren't prioritized for Evanston residents, at least partially, you know, you'll still see the displacement. Anytime someone is housed or employed, no matter where they're from, it's a good thing. Don't get me wrong, but if our goal is to address unemployment and housing insecurity among Evanston residents, we have to be mindful of every time an Evanston resident is employed, every time an Evanston resident moves into a home that they can afford. And I'm not sure we've always done a good job of that, but I'm laser focused on that, right? That's the win to me. It's not just anytime a new job comes to Evanston, and it's not just anytime a new affordable housing unit comes to Evanston. It's the confluence of those things, but also an Evanston resident being placed in that opportunity.
all right. Well, thank you so much, Bobby. I know we were only supposed to do 30 minutes. I don't know
I
how
know.
long we've actually been on. I learned some new things today, as always. So thank you so much. And thank you for being one of those leaders in the community that did not give up the fight for the Fifth Ward School. And now it's turning into a reality. So thank you. Thank you
I guess the
for your
last thing
fight
I'm
in
going to
that.
say on that point again is just thank you to everybody involved. And I hope hopefully that this is going to be a school. Not even hopefully. I think this will be a school, because it will be successful, that attracts people of color, broadly speaking, African Americans, the Latinx population, to move to the Fifth Ward. Because what I've heard from Dr. Horton is that, and obviously they don't know exactly who will decide to attend the school, but they think, roughly 52, I think I heard, percent of the student body will be African American, and then another, I think it was either 24 or 30%. I'm off on that number, but will be members of our Latinx population, and so I think this school will attract African Americans and Latinx families from all over the area to want to move to the Fifth Ward, understanding that there's a state-of-the-art new school here that is kind of designed to address the individual needs of their family members who attend the school, and that should be exciting. I don't want this to be lost. Is this going to accelerate gentrification? I don't think it's going to accelerate gentrification. You and I talked about this, and I said I think it will slow it down, because right now in the Fifth Ward, what you have is, you can move here and take advantage of buying a relatively, affordable house for some people, for some families, but your child doesn't have to go to school here, right? Because there is no school here. So depending on where you live, your child may go to Orrington, they may go to Kingsley, they may go to Walker, they may go to Lincolnwood. But now, under this new change, starting in 2024, once the school is here, all students will have to attend a school that is 80%, at least 80% of Black and Latinx. And I think what we've seen in history is typically when there's a higher population of people of color, African Americans, that some people flee those circumstances, right? They don't necessarily want to participate in an institution where there's a higher percentage of African American and Latinx members. They typically flee those type of situations. And so I think more so the community that this will attract is African Americans and Latinx members. And there will be white students at the school. The Fifth Ward is a naturally a diverse area, but I want to highlight that. I think this is a win for the Black community and the Latinx population, not just in Evanston, but around the area. This will be a school that really is going to be a strong PTA, strong, parents that are able to feel much more, I think, empowered under this new PTA than they do in the PTAs they're in now, and will be able to advocate for the needs of their students. But I also think the curriculum will specifically address the needs of our children and our students. So I want to leave with that. This is for us, and let's spread that around. That this really is a school for us and for our community, and I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yes, we are all excited. So thank you so much for your part in all the work. I know it was many before, and so many, Anya, Dr. Horton, Sarita, Henry, so many people kept the fight going. They took the baton and ran. So thank you all so much. And one thing I would love to see at this Fifth Ward School is more Black male educators.
Yeah.
So that,
and I think Dr. Horton is
yes.
I know he's fully on board with that. They've already made a lot of change, or already made some changes, HR changes to improve their recruitment of Black educators as well as Black school leaders, principals. So I know he's fully on board.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much, Councilmember Burns.
All right.
Thank you. Keep up the fight. And
Absolutely.
all right. Thank
Until
you.
next time. Take care.
Until next time. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye. All right. This is Evanston Live TV. That was Councilmember Bobby Burns talking about the new Fifth Ward School and affordable housing and the vision and everything for Evanston coming up. Making sure that people can afford to actually stay here. That is so key. That is so key. That is a topic, everyone is weighing in on. So many people are being priced out of Evanston right now. So, that's his vision, is to put a housing authority together to make sure that, people can stay and live in this beautiful community that we call Evanston. So you all stay tuned right here, Evanston Live TV. More amazing people doing amazing things right here in Evanston, Illinois.